Libya demand action after the shocking attack on a detention facility near Tripoli. Caribbean leaders have expressed satisfaction following the conclusion of the CARICOM meeting in St. Lucia. And hundreds of thousands attended London's Pride March, but some groups have criticized its omission of minority voices. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo. This is from the South. The survivors of the attack on a migrant detention facility near Tripoli held a protest demanding justice and urgent evacuation from Libya. Detainees demonstrate against the strike on the Taljura detention center. The survivors also called for an urgent evacuation to safety and that justice is served to the perpetrators, according to witnesses. The refugee survivors are appealing for urgent help and claim they've been sleeping outside since the attack took place on Tuesday. Local media has reported the migrants are resisting efforts to force them back. Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council has called for a ceasefire in Libya. The Security Council has pleaded for a pause to the conflict. From 3 months, members of the Security and warned others to desist from conflict.
And he is against civilians. This incident underscores refugees and migrants until their asylum claims can be safely repatriated. The General reiterates his call for an immediate return to the political dialogue. And just on a related note, this afternoon the Security Council will be holding consultations on Libya, and we expect Under Secretary.
A migrant rescue vessel has made port in Italy to find the reactionary with 41 migrants on board who had from North Africa. Malta had offered to allow the migrants to disembark in its territory, but the Alexis captain felt the journey would be. Italian police were waiting for the vessel at the port. Israel has returned a Palestinian fishing sunk and confiscated in 2016 to its owner in horrendous condition. Israeli forces sank Abdul Muti al-Habib's boat while his crew was working within the confines of the limited fishing zone imposed by Israel. The head of the union, Sakara Bakr, said that harassing Palestinian vessels has become normal under Israel's blockade. Our correspondent in Cairo, Nayara Tardo, has the latest developments on the century Israel hoped to impose on Palestinians.
The Palestine Organization, the PLO, has cautioned in a communique regarding the intentions of the United States and that the United States communique in which they questioned the by Jared Kushner, aide to the U.S. Trump, regarding the position of Palestinian refugees. Kushner insists that Palestinian refugees should remain permanently in the countries in which insists that another part of this call for a deal of the century will soon be revealed, including the political part. In its communique, the PLO warned that despite the failure of the U.S.-led conference, that the United States will continue to insist on the implementation and imposition of this supposed plan for peace and deal of the century, as it's called, for the Middle East, something that is completely the Palestinian authorities because it doesn't respect the rights of the Palestinian people, such as the right of return for refugees, and it aims to declare Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
We thank Nayara for that report. The CARICOM leaders meeting that came to an end on Friday was fruitful, according to CARICOM chairperson and St. Lucia's president, Alan Chesnate. Among the items the heads of government discussed were the CARICOM single market and economy and measures to enhance it. The conference was convened to coincide with CARICOM Day, July 4th, 1973, which marks the Treaty of Chaguaramas, which created the Caribbean Community and Common Market. Our correspondent in St. Lucia, Alison Kentnish, has more.
Heads of government of the Caribbean Community CARICOM have ended their three-day 40th regular summit here in St. Lucia. Incoming chairman of CARICOM, Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Alan Chasney, addressed an end-of-summit press conference late Friday. He said that there was frank dialogue on issues ranging from CARICOM's flagship initiative, that is the CARICOM Single Market and Economy, to engagement with the private sector in the region. And just to give you an idea of some of the key decisions taken, Prime Minister Chasney says that the group identified EU blacklisting as a clear and direct threat to the economic well-being of this region and have agreed to refocus CARICOM's stance on this issue. On Haiti, CARICOM's cabinet agreed to send a delegation of leaders on a fact-finding mission to that country before a firm decision is taken on the political and socio-economic crisis that's unfolding there. And on Venezuela, the heads were unanimous in their resolve to keep pushing for peaceful dialogue. They've decided to continue the mediation process, and this will be led by the leaders of St. Kitts and Nevis, Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago. Barbados said that the was historic for one reason. Whereas acknowledging the issue of vulnerability is in fact a valid criteria during access to development financing. Regional governments have been pushing for this issue for 2 decades, and the leaders cite a prime example that within 24 hours, a country's entire fortune, in that case, area category 4, that and CARICOM in particular excluded from access to official development assistance.
Listen for that report, and coming up after, hear from Trinidad and Tobago's youngest ever senator about his new party. Don't go away. Welcome back to. After Argentina beat Chile 2-1 in the Copa America third place playoff, the Maracanã Stadium in Rio de Janeiro will be the stage for the dispute between the Brazilian and Peruvian national teams for the 2019 title this Sunday. Brazil's most famous stadium has gone through different
Brazil is the country of football. Not that others aren't, but here, this sport dominates the heart of the people. The Maracanã in Rio de Janeiro is its main stage. A stadium located inside a sports complex that has undergone different changes in recent years. 2014 World.
There was a sports complex that wasn't on low incomes, people living on the street. There is also a school that was also almost demolished, one of the best schools of Rio de Janeiro. So from a progressive point of view, it is no longer perfect as a public space that should serve to help develop society and reduce social inequalities.
Famous stadium in Brazil, and in 6 have transformed.
The invisibilization of this heritage is so that people, the press, international organizations do not see it here. There is culture next to the Maracanã indigenous culture. It is a centuries-old heritage, a heritage with 150 years, a heritage of Syrian people.
The stadium, expensive tickets, is not the only problem for the local fans. The country currently has 13 million people unemployed, and attacks on labour rights. Not finding space in the conventional job market, informality prevails for some workers who make a living selling souvenirs at the doors of the Maracana. They explain why there isn't a massive presence of Brazilians in the stadiums.
It's financial. The people don't have any money. You really see how it is. It doesn't seem to be.
It's absurd. Tickets should be cheaper in order to give opportunities to all. I think they are very expensive.
Importance of notes in Brazil and in other countries.
It's time to really question the multi-purpose arena format, to look for a solution to it, as it's unsustainable for the public to maintain this sports apparatus, and for the fans who want well. That international media carried this message, because what happened to us could happen to our neighbors.
Walk out of the stadium. It's South American in
celebrated to Honduran Armed Forces honored the heroes of the homeland. In a of Defense, Vladimir Padrino Lopez reiterated that Venezuela is determined to be free, sovereign, and in South American nation to break from the Spanish crown.
Estamos del lado correcto de la historia.
We are on the We will send our country for the great victory of peace, the social content, economic is dreamed of 200 years ago. We right side of history. Public.
The
Strategic Operational Commander of the Bolivarian Armed Forces, Remigio Ceballos, spoke before the National Constituent Assembly, saying that unilateral coercive actions have increased against Venezuela since Trump arrived to the White House.
Trump, the current president of the U.S., intensified the coercive unilateral actions with our nation in 2017, violating international norms with greater intensity than its predecessor. And it focused on destabilizing actions against Venezuela based on lies, which had been taken abroad by lackey opposition politicians who misrepresented the content of our Constitution. And now, in 2019, actions against the country have increased.
Let's take a historic holiday.
On the Los Procedes, the Venezuelan capital, the details of the military parade in commemoration of the 200 of Venezuela's independence for civil and military authorities and before the world. This historian tells how on July 5th of 1811, the Republic not only disavowed the king, imposed, began an independence process.
On July 5th, 1811, we declared ourselves not only free of King Bonaparte in Spain, but declared ourselves absolutely free forever of any foreign. Then, Venezuela has the fullness of sovereign power of independence. It's free from any foreign power, since that moment until now, and we hope that it is forever, because within the attributes of it lies its continued
States.
We have a process of aggressions by the foremost imperialist power in the world, which is their goal is to see to it we lose our independence. A puppet ruler installed by someone.
At this forum in Caracas, they reviewed the story of relations between the United States and Venezuela and their current status.
It's a very complex
First, because the United States aims to dismantle all of the political project which has developed in Venezuela, which has been deepening the democracy since 1999, with a new constitution and
historian, the country faces a central dispute which
we reached the point where this group to North American imperialism managed to triumph over the Bolivarian project. Well, of course they are going to only the reserves of North American Veritas in a custodial government, a North American protectorate.
people put their trust in the civic military unity, maintain their independence.
Demonstrations took who were led by the opposition took to the streets, calling on the ruling coalition illegal. Opposition leader Barajak Dio addressed demonstrators, saying he will not tolerate any further delayed tactics employed by the government.
No young person. This is a signal to them. Today, this is a signal to them that we are not going to tolerate them in government behaving with impunity, that we are not going to allow them to use house to house as an excuse in the elections. Influence the CCJ.
New political party hoping to make an impact in the 2020 general elections. In 2017, Nicole Edwards became the country's youngest temporary independent senator at age 25, and he's now the founder and leader of the Progressive Party. He joined the political status quo.
We've not had the right leadership to listen to the people and implement these solutions. So Trinidad and Tobago does not have a paucity of technical skills or know-how. It's simply about how do we bring these actors to the table so that they can form a part of the country's future. So our vision is to be as inclusive as possible, to listen to civil society, to listen to the private sector, bring all the actors to the table and chart a course forward.
Still to come, the president of Tunisia has resumed his duties after 2 weeks of illness. Stay with us. Welcome back to Telesur. The 35th session of the African Union's Executive Council meeting has entered into its second day in Niger. Egypt's Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry chaired the reports about several AU activities were discussed. These are said to be followed by the 12th Extraordinary Summit of the African Union's Heads of State and Government on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement on Sunday. The biggest moment will be when Nigeria, one of Africa's biggest economies, formally joins the trading bloc.
It's a remarkable achievement, and one that can be even described as historic, in which the African Union Commission, the Ministers of Trade, the regional economic communities, our traditional partners, and a battery of experts made available by member states have invested themselves with unparalleled dedication.
The Sudan Revolutionary Front, a coalition of armed movements in Sudan, has rejected the agreement reached between the Transitional Military Council and the Alliance for Freedom and Change. The group claims the agreement does not reflect the country's pressing issues and stressed that any agreement not based on peacemaking is an extension of the old regime. They have called for an urgent meeting under the auspices of the African Union. The ruling Transitional Military Council and the Opposition Alliance for Freedom and Change reached an agreement on power sharing during a transitional period of 3 years and 3 months. Russian sailors who died on a Navy research submarine earlier this week have been laid to rest in St. Petersburg. The 14 sailors were killed in a blaze inside the vessel in the Barents Sea on Monday. The Defense Ministry said the sailors were killed by toxic fumes from the fire. They have been buried at a cemetery in St. Petersburg. On Friday, Russian President Vladimir Putin bestowed top state honors on the sailors.
Dmitry, one of the killed officers, was attentive and rigorous. He carried out orders without fault. It's hard to say what happened, but he preferred to do what he had to do, despite his family situation.
Hundreds of people demonstrated in central Paris to demand tougher action on violence against women in France. The protest was organized by various women's rights groups to condemn the growing number of women being killed by men because of their gender. The demonstrators observed 74 seconds of silence in tribute to the 74 women killed in France so far this year. According to Interior Ministry figures, 130 women were killed in 2017 by their husband or partner.
The number of women victims of femicide is clear. We have it here. It's troubling that we need to go this far to tell people, open your eyes, and to especially tell our political leaders, open your eyes. At the moment in France, there are women who are at risk of dying, who are not protected or incorrectly protected. The government is not doing what needs to be done.
Hundreds of thousands of people have taken part in Pride celebrations in the United Kingdom's capital, London. The annual LGBTQ Pride in London event celebrates queer resistance, and the date commemorates the 1969 Stonewall riots in New York. The London Mayor Sadiq Khan was in attendance in London.
Great thing about Pride in London is we get to celebrate our diversity, but it's also a good chance for those of us that aren't from the LGBTQ plus community to be allies and to be proud allies. It's really important that we celebrate the diversity of our city, and I want today to be the biggest Pride ever, and I think it will be.
While attendance is said to be at its highest ever, this year's Pride has come under criticism for excessive commercialization. The activist group Lesbians and Gays Support the Migrants march under alternative adverts bearing pro-refugee and anti-homelessness slogans. The group has placed alternative adverts across the city to highlight those excluded from the Pride in London by excessive cost. And finally, the Festival of San Fermin has kicked off in the city of Pamplona. While popularly known for its bull run, the festival also serves as a celebration of Basque culture. Social movements in the Basque region hold workshops to raise money for their activities. And with that story, we've come to these and other stories. As always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.